Nikola Jokic had one of his best games, maybe his best game ever, and in doing so proved why he's an all-time great. The Nuggets have rediscovered their championship selves. Are the Wolves done? Plus, why Jamal Murray's in a can't-win situation. Plus, we'll look at Game 6. Lots to talk about on Locked On Nuggets.
You are Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for joining us and making us part of your day, being with us here Monday through Friday, being an everydayer. We appreciate you guys hanging out with us, whether you're joining us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or on youtube.com/LockedOnNuggets, the best way for you to support the show. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. My name is Matt Moore. I'm the senior NBA writer for the Action Network. So, I want to start off the show with a little bit of programming apology. Here's what happened. I got home from the Nuggets-Wolves game at 3 o'clock in the morning because they started that thing at 8:30. And for those of you that don't know, Nikola Jokic likes to take his time post-game. And so I got home at 3 a.m. after writing columns. So clearly wasn't going to do a show then. And then the next day, effectively, I was so wrecked by staying up until 3 a.m. at age 42 that I was unable to get to a show yesterday. I did not have it in me. And so despite one of the best all-time great Nuggets iconic games, we didn't have a show, and that's on me. It's not on Swipa. It's not on Adam. That's a me thing. So I apologize. And today we'll celebrate the greatness of Nikola Jokic. We'll talk about the Nuggets finding their championship selves. We'll talk about the Nuggets defense. Anybody but Ant is what I've called it, the ABA defense. I thought about ABBA, but I didn't think enough people would be young enough or old enough to get that reference. We'll talk about if the Wolves can adjust in Game 6, as well as I'll describe why Jamal Murray is in a can't-win situation. All right, let's start here. So it's been 2 days now since the Nuggets beat the Minnesota Timberwolves in Game 5 of their Western Conference semifinals matchup. In doing so, it was not just like a great Nuggets game. It wasn't like a okay Nuggets game. It was an all-time Nuggets game. It was an all-time Jokic performance. We're always kind of in this position after the game trying to understand. Sometime I'm going to drag Adam into like a lab in the spare seconds he has available, and try and go through the list of all the great Jokic games. But 40 points on 15 of 22 shooting, 7 rebounds, 13 assists, 2 steals, and a block. The list of people that have had at least 40 points, at least 13 rebounds, at least 60% shooting from the field is 3 players. That's it. It's Jimmy Butler, Oscar Robertson, and Jokic. That's it. Third player to ever do that. On the night when he got his 3rd MVP trophy to celebrate in front of the crowd. So it was an incredible night at Ball Arena. The crowds are so incredible in these games. And it's funny looking back just because I was pretty critical of Nuggets crowds in the early part of this run, 2018, 19, after the bubble in 2021, when they came back a little bit. But the crowds really since last year have been just phenomenal. And part of that's because they expect to win. And if you win, then Denver believes that you can win. That's one of the great things I think about the Denver sports scene is if you prove to them that you're a winner, they will believe you will always win. And that's pretty great because not every fan base is like that. And the crowds have been absolutely fantastic. You know, I was thinking back at not just Joker's great games, but I was thinking back to all of the great playoff performances I've seen, like the truly greatest games that I've seen, going back all the way to Jordan. And like LeBron 2012 is not a bad analogy for this, in that LeBron was down 3-2 in a series. It really looked like the Celtics had his number. He was in Boston. It was a closeout game, and he came out and he absolutely ripped them to shreds. But a key differential is that facing an all-time great defense, or at least the shell of one in 2012, LeBron had to get outside of his comfort zone to win that game. He just had to hit jumpers, just score over and over and over and over again. And he just nailed every single jumper. This game was more about how Nikola Jokic, when engaged and activated and in his best form, can dominate the game regardless of what the defense does. Joker didn't have to score in this game. He had 13 assists. Like, he did dictate things. He controlled the game beyond scoring. He just also happened to tear poor Rudy Gobert into pieces. And they had absolutely no answer for him. He had his touch. And I've talked about it all year about how that was a quietly missing thing for Joker this year, is that his touch wasn't quite as elite as it has been in years past, where it was so good. It was almost unbelievable. His touch in this game was incredible. Every single shot he floated up, dropped clean. Didn't need much of the rim. He wasn't even just laying it on the rim. Not a lot of Moses boards where he puts it up on the glass and then goes back and gets it and puts it back. He really was just that locked in. Hit threes in this game. It was an absolute masterpiece. And that's a game where after you watch it live, when you are a sports person, writer, media person, etc., and you get to be in the building for that, you are grateful for having been there. You're grateful to have seen it. And the players felt the same way. Aaron Gordon talked about how he's just I'm not really sure what I saw there. He went on and on. He ran out of superlatives. He was incredible, astounding, amazing. He just went on and on and on. And, he even throws a subtle dig in it at Joker, which is sometimes he's too passive and we need him to score. He said that. And that was really kind of the dictating mark of this game. Was the Nuggets played great defense. We'll talk about that in the second segment. And Joker was phenomenal. And Joker was amazing. And they got good contributions. Christian Brown was phenomenal in this game. I mean, I just thought he brought so much in terms of 10 points is great, 4 of 8. He hit a 3. That's obviously huge. Rebounding, Christian was great. I can't say enough about AG's game. This is a game where AG, again, is never going to get the highlight credit. And you got a really great article from Rob Mahoney from The Athletic you should go read. But 18 points, 10 boards, 5 assists for Aaron on top of terrific defense. 7 of 14 from the field, nothing wasted. And he was just absolutely incredible. But the story is Nikola. And I disagree with a lot of my colleagues who I respect and appreciate their views. And it's okay for us to disagree. I don't think that you need Jamal Murray for the Nuggets to win these games. Need is a strong word. I think there are matchups maybe where that's the case. I don't necessarily think that this is one of them. And even then, I don't necessarily know that there is one. And it's not that Jamal's not important. It's not that Jamal doesn't matter. It's not that Jamal hasn't given this team so much, and he will give this team more as they continue on the playoffs, at least for the next, at most 2 games, at minimum 2 games, at minimum 2 games. It's that I've always felt that this team has enough talent built around Nikola Jokic's greatness to be able to win in a number of ways. And that's what, we can't talk about how the Nuggets are the best because they have all of these problem solves and then say that one player struggling means that they can't win. And that to me, was proof in this game that Nikola Jokic was great enough to break the Wolves, to tear them down. The defense supported, guys stepped up, and they were able to get a huge win. And now they lead 3-2 in the series. The Wolves had not lost 3 games in a row. And now they have. All of the stuff that was missing in games 1 and 2, they've rediscovered. And not only that, the Wolves effectively, and look, the Wolves didn't poke the bear. The Wolves tried very hard not to poke the bear. They tried very hard not to provide bulletin board material or talk trash to do any of that because they understand how good this team is. But what happened was going down 0-2, whether it was the talking heads talking about how bad they were, whether it was shows like this one, criticizing the team's effort and performance in game 2, regardless of what it was, the Nuggets found it then. They didn't flip a switch. They found it. That's a better way to talk about it. Because it's not that the Nuggets don't want to be great every night. It's that you can't really find that greatness. But starting in game 3 and really behind a strong Jamal Murray start in game 3, they started to find their greatness. And that carried over into game 4. And that really carried over into game 5, where Jokic was the best player on the planet. Nikola Jokic is an all-time great. You are watching an all-time great. I have a hard time putting that into perspective. I have a hard time realizing that night by night. I walk into the arena every night and I'm covering one of the greatest players of all time. That's shocking to me. It's shocking for it to happen in a place like Denver. Not that Denver doesn't deserve it, but that the history of the NBA does not pretend to that. That's never been the case in the NBA. That you cover all-time greats in cities like Los Angeles and New York or Boston. They don't happen in cities like Denver very often, but they did. He's an all-time great. He's one of the greatest players to ever play the game. And it is an absolute joy to be able to cover him. When he's engaged, as he was it in game 2, no, I will not apologize. On the other side, we'll talk about the defense that the Nuggets put up. Plus, I'm going to talk about why Jamal Murray's in kind of a can't-win situation. Later on, we'll get to game 6 and what the Nuggets need to do to close out the series versus the Timberwolves. We'll talk about that up next here on Locked On Nuggets. The show is brought to you by BetterHelp. It's been a rough spring for me, not going to lie. It's been a really rough spring. And I've talked about the stuff with my mom going on here, but it's also like the playoffs. And so like I'm trying to balance being a good son to my mom and a good writer for the site I work for and a podcaster for you good people, and balance being a good dad and a good husband. And I'm going to be honest with you, like I'm failing. Like that's just like straight up. And like everyone I think fails sometimes in going through those kind of things. And that's why therapy is so important, is to help you work through not only your failures, but also your triumphs, to try and understand those good things and keep perspective on how you're trying to keep up with the life that you've built for yourself. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire and you get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Get it off your chest with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate you guys being with us on Thursday before game 6 of the Nuggets Western Conference semifinals matchup with the Minnesota Timberwolves. The Wolves, a small favorite, -2.5 points tonight in game 6. Anthony Edwards had himself a bad night in game 5, and I broke it down on Action Network, and I'll give you kind of the outline, the big breakdown here. You can check that out if you want to read it on actionnetwork.com or in the Action Network app. They deploy what I refer to as an anybody but Ant defense, and these are hard to do in the NBA because so many great players have so many great counters, and there are ways that good coaches can build to kind of free these things up. But one of the problems is that Anthony Edwards is 22, and Ant's not even a full-time point guard. I talked to Mike Conley once, and I asked him, how long does it take to be a great point guard in the NBA? And he was like, it legitimately takes 6 years. He's like, it takes 6 years to learn everything you need to know about running point in the NBA. And Anthony Edwards is effectively having to run point because he needs to be the primary initiator on almost all sets for them. The Nuggets did a couple of things in this game. One, Jokic was as active at the level as he has been. I've talked all year about how like he's played soft drop or a high drop, and even when he's at the level, isn't very engaged. He was up into Ant. As good as Nikola Jokic was offensively, no, Jokic was better offensively. Let's be real. He had 40 points on 15 of 25, but his defense was also amazing. He was so engaged, active, cut off all those angles. There's one where they set a high pick really about 5 feet beyond the top of the arc, and Christian gets peeled by the screen. And so Ant's got he's got a lane, and Joker just stones him. Not a charge, not a block. It wasn't a foul. Like he just stops him. And Ant was caught off guard by that. And he was really caught off guard. The other thing the Nuggets did though, was the Wolves really credited Jokic for the switches. And they asked Jokic about it after the game. And he was like, he laughed and he was like, I'm looking for help. That's what I'm doing. But the other thing that the Nuggets really did that was great was they didn't just play 2 on ball. They shaded a third defender from whatever direction that Ant was turning to. And usually the counter for that is you just reverse the pick, right? So if say it's a high pick and roll and Ant's going left to right, picture that in your head. Okay. So Jokic shows high, Christian Brown's coming over the top of the screen, right? They would send another defender over the top. The key there is that if Ant rejects it and goes the other way, then you're in real trouble. But Christian did a phenomenal. This was like the key for Christian Brown, is that Christian's not great at getting over picks, but he is awesome at containing if a guy tries to reverse that pick, if he tries to reject it. So when Ant would try and reject it, Christian locked him up. When he tried to get the edge on Joker either stoned him or a help defender, KCP, Aaron Gordon, etc., would show actively, and they dared everybody else to beat them. Like I'm not going to sit here and put this like, oh no, they had no options. No, like the Wolves had options. Jaden McDaniels was open. Rudy Gobert was wide open on these plays. They're tough passes. People have commented that to me on the clips I've shown. They are tough passes, but those are passes that like top level players are expected to make. Ant's not used to making them. And it caught him off guard. He had 9 assists in this game and still wasn't a great passer because there were so many angles and looks that he could not find against how the Nuggets were crowding, trapping, and putting pressure on him. And it's a very good strategy because the Wolves don't have a lot of offensive trust. When you're not a great offense, it's hard to. Like, you know that you're not a great offense, so you lean more into things that you know work. Karl Anthony Towns, pick and pops. Jaden McDaniels, corner threes. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, corner threes. Mike Conley, high pick and roll threes. Anthony Edwards just doing awesome isolation things. You lean into those things as much as possible. And the Nuggets basically said, you have to do something else. They presented the problem, which is, hey, we're going to give you counters, but these are counters that you're not comfortable with. These aren't counters that you want to do, and your offense isn't very good. Can you beat us with them? And the answer was no. The Wolves could not beat them with it. Now, Chris Finch has had 2 days to try and figure out ways to do that. Now, I'll also say this, like, it's important to do that. Like, you would want this if you were a Wolves fan. If the situation was reversed and Jamal was out, you would be like, look, we didn't have our starting point guard. And I'm not saying that Mike Conley is as good as Jamal is at this point in their careers. He's not. Like, Mike's had a better career, but because of longevity, but Jamal's better now. Mike was out in this game. Conley was out in this game, and like that really did cause them a world of hurt. They didn't have a secondary creator. Jaden McDaniels can't do it. Nickeil Alexander-Walker can't do it. They tried initiating with Nickeil, and it was a disaster. And that's rough, but that's just like you find out things about guys. And that's where Nickeil really has to improve, is he's got to get better at being able to create. Without Mike, they had no way of being able to create offense. And because Mike was out, they had to expand their rotation a little bit. They couldn't play Monte Morris heavy minutes because of how quickly Monte, unfortunately, gets cooked defensively. So they played Kyle Anderson more. And I think that's a horrible mistake that Finch has to rectify. He can't play in the series. I said it from the series preview on Den Vengers. This is a terrible matchup for Kyle Anderson. That said, he played him, and it was a disaster. And so with 2 days, we'll see if the Wolves can come up with some sort of strategic counters to try and get back into this, especially if Conley plays. We'll talk a little bit more about that on the other side, but I do want to talk about Jamal Murray here real quick. So Jamal Murray in this game, look, the line's okay. 16 points, 7 of 14, 4 assists. He got some buckets late to get the shooting percentage to look good. I've really kind of hated what the series has been for Jamal, as much as like I'm not a Jamal guy is the thing. I don't think anybody has not clashed. Jamal is not like buddy with me. That's not a thing, right? And that's okay. I'm not buddy with any of the players. It's just not a thing. And I've been critical of Jamal when, one, he struggled, or two, if he's about his post-game behavior, right? I've been critical on him before, and that's just kind of how I go. I don't like the way that this has been framed routinely, which is that, like, think about this. If the Nuggets lose and Jamal scores a lot, well, Jamal needed to pass more. He doesn't need to score as much. They need better playmaking. He's got to get Jokic involved. If Jamal has lots of assists but shoots badly, they need more from Jamal Murray. He's got to be playoff Jamal. And then when they win, the implication is going to be like, they don't need Jamal Murray. What do they really need Jamal Murray for? Like, this is a can't-win situation for Jamal Murray. That's rare, honestly, is that he can't. The only way is for him to dominate the game, and he's never going to do that because he plays with Nikola Jokic. You know, like if Jamal had been playing for years and years with a traditional pick and roll big, maybe he'd be looked at like Devin Booker, right? These kind of guys that can dominate the game scoring with some passing included, because he's proven to be a really good passer. But Jamal in a bad calf, there's almost like no way for him to win in this series. Steve Wynn says Jamal seems to have won when he hit the 2 game winners. I think that's true, honestly. Is like those 2 game winners covered up the fact of how rough Jamal was in this series. Like, it covered up the fact that he shot so poorly. He missed everything, and in this series, that's really come apparent as his struggles. Now, I thought he was great in game 3 and game 4. He was a huge reason they won both of those games. But I do think that there's a little bit here where Jamal gets all of the blame when they lose and none of the credit when they win, unless he does something outrageous, like 30 points on 50, 40, 90 in the conference finals, or if he has a 30-point triple-double in the finals. Like, he has to play to that level. And I'm just not sure that that's like an accurate or fair bar to set for him. I'm very interested in setting reasonable expectations, Like, for Aaron Gordon, I'm never like he needs to score 20. I'm just like, he needs to impact the game in the ways that he does. And that's in all facets. Like, honestly, my biggest judge of how Aaron's playing is his defense and his assists. When Aaron's diamond, they are so tough to stop. But with Jamal, like, he has to, like, he's better when he has well-rounded games. And I do think that there's been a little exaggeration, a little bit of some of those kind of things. As far as like, Jamal can't be imperative to a team with the best player on earth. That I don't believe. And so I kind of think that Jamal needs a little bit of a break. Before we get a break, Daryl asked, what do you think about MPJ's struggles recently? I liked MPJ's opportunity in the last game because I thought that they were going to help more on AG, and they still haven't. Like, they just are not. They are so hesitant to try and guard Aaron, and that's opening up all those dunks. This is a lot of it, guys. Look, I think MPJ's made a lot of mistakes defensively. He got absolutely cooked on a possession, and him and Malone were like going back and forth, and like, not a bad way. They weren't yelling at each other. Like, MPJ was just like, "Can you explain to me what I did wrong?" He's made a lot of mistakes defensively in this series. The Wolves have leveraged him pretty hard, and he's got to be better in the next round. Period. Like, end dot. Luka will hunt him into oblivion. You got to be ready for that. So overall, I actually think that a lot of MPJ's quietness, like, he's 2 of 10, 2 of 7. He's missed shots. 7 boards, pretty good. Still won his minutes. A lot of it, I think, for me, is that he is not getting open looks because the Wolves have decided, absolutely no, we're not going to let you get open threes. Like, the Wolves watched the Lakers series and we're like, we're not losing that way. The Wolves have basically said, if we lose on Aaron Gordon, we'll lose on Aaron Gordon, and they're losing on Aaron Gordon. That's the role player that they decided to live with. So that's a lot of it. Hurricane says, you've already written off OKC. Yeah, I just don't think OKC can win on the road. It's too tough. It's too tough a spot for a young team like that. On the other side, we'll talk about what the Wolves can counter with in Game 6 and kind of my expectation for Game 6 here up next on Locked On Nuggets. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of the NBA, which makes getting playoff tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to tip off. So there's a secret for you. If you want to sneak into a Western Conference Finals game, if the Nuggets do advance, if the Nuggets, or Game 7, wait till tip. Just hang out, come down to Ball Arena, hang out outside. There's always festivities outside. And then you can wait till tip off and then hit up Game Time, and you can usually get in the building. You can save up to 60% off buying last minute deals for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. You got all-in pricing. This is huge. Being able to do the all-in pricing is massive because that way you're not like, oh my God, when the ticket price actually shows up when you're going to check out. It's huge. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Final segment here with you on a Thursday. We'll preview Game 6 real quick because there's only like, what? Trying to think. Like 10 hours before this game? All right. The Wolves, now I have to be the bad guy. Right? I've praised Jokic. I've done all these things, championship stuff. Well, now I'm going to be the bad guy. I think Wolves win Game 6. And the reason I say that is it's less about like some sort of tactical advantage. It's more to me about the history of these series that I've watched. there is an emotional ebb and flow that comes out in the course of different series, and how this one has gone is very unique in that the Nuggets lost the first two, and that's rare. Especially to come back and tie 2-2, that's even more rare. So 0-2, the Nuggets storm back. They win 3 in a row. Beating the Wolves 4 in a row is very, very, very difficult. Beating them 4 in a row with a closeout game in Minnesota, even more difficult. Beating them in a closeout game in Minnesota after Ant has been challenged and Mike Conley was out, and I expect him to play in this game, even more difficult. There are also these games where the home team wins game 6, but there's also this feeling of like, yeah, the other team's going to win in game 7. And that's how I feel. It's just like, I think the Nuggets can win 3 of 4, or can win 4 of 5 games versus the Wolves. I don't think that they can win 4 in a row, as not with the closeout game in Minnesota. If you ask, there's been this idea of like the Wolves being broken. I don't agree. I just don't agree with this assessment. And I think that a lot of it is like, I think a lot of Nuggets fans and analysts are seeing what they want to see, which is they want to see Minnesota as this uneven, badly tempered team. And that's like not really who they are. Like, they're a very even keel squad. They have a very professional approach. They have tried to stay humble this entire series. There has not been a lot of text. There has not been an ejection. There has not been some sort of like wild sequence. Like, Rudy did the money gesture at the officials. Rudy's done that like 4 times. Like, that's not out of the ordinary. Cat's gotten in foul trouble. Cat gets in foul trouble. Like, he's a handsy defender. That's part of the deal. But like, I don't think that they're emotionally off tilt, and I don't think that they believe that they're screwed. I think that they have doubt now. That's undeniable, but they doubt themselves. And the Nuggets can close this game out, and it wouldn't surprise me. The Nuggets have been better. They've won 2 in Minnesota. They have all the momentum. But whenever there's momentum, I'm always like, okay, but eventually momentum fades. And so I do kind of think that there's an opportunity tonight for the Wolves to get this, but I do not see any way that they win both games. So I think Denver loses tonight and then closes it out in game 7 on Sunday, which honestly, that seems like that's like the most likely scenario, right? Is like, if you've gone in, I said Nuggets in 6 with a lean towards 5, because I was like, if this gets out of hand, it's going to really get out of hand. And it went the opposite way. But also the Nuggets, once they activated, if they were to win this one, would have won 4 straight. And if they win in 7, it's 4 or 5, right? So it's basically just like the Nuggets were not activated in the first 2 games. And then once they won 4 or 5. That's not to say that I was right about the series, because I wasn't. I did wind up saying Nuggets in 6, which is possible tonight, but this series has not been what anybody expected. I do think Sale Philly says I'm 50-50 on game 6. I'm wondering how they're guarding Jokic. So a lot of the consequence of Rudy being on Nikola was very simply like the AG stuff. If there is a tactical counter that the Wolves are going to go to, it's this. You go back to Towns guarding Nikola. You hope that Towns and Nas don't get in foul trouble as they have in the last 2 games. Rudy helps weak side, because it's still, as much as Jokic solved it, it does bug him. Like, he doesn't prefer having to turn and then seeing Rudy jumping at it on the weak side. You keep up with that, but I think the key here is probably that your help side defender helps down on AG and leaves MPJ open. That's like the key here, is that MPJ's man has to help down on Aaron Gordon and prevent the dunks, and just basically say like, MPJ hasn't hit in the series. We got to dare him to hit shots now, because we dared Aaron Gordon and he's killed us. So it might be as simple as that. And if MPJ hits 5 threes, which he can, the Nuggets can win this game. But you try and chip away at Jokic's efficiency like he did in games 1 and 2. You prevent Aaron Gordon from the easy stuff. You hope Jamal doesn't bounce back, and that gets you in range. Offensively, there's a lot of stuff that they can do. I will say this, they started running some stuff in the 4th quarter, and you see this a lot where teams will start making switches in the 4th. So they'll help off. They'll get Ant off ball, and they'll try and rotate him more in those kind of sequences. Mike Conley's got to play. I think he does. I know that he's on there with a Soleus, which is what Giannis had. Finch really made it sound like they were just being cautious with Mike, and that he's going to play in this one. So I kind of expect Mike Conley to play. Conley's going to have a big game for them. But if the Nuggets are going to win tonight, it's Conley doesn't play. The Wolves don't adjust. Finch plays Kyle Anderson 15 minutes again, or 10 minutes even, and the Nuggets bench continues to do what it's done. But I will say the bench, so Christian had a bunch of run out dunks, and he was phenomenal. I gave him all the credit in the world. But Justin Holiday was 0 of 1 in 15 minutes and only a +2 in that game. Okay. Reggie played just 638. He's effectively only barely in the rotation. He was 3 of 3. He's given them the points. The bench is starting to fade back a little bit. And so if the Wolves can reverse that trend, that puts them in a pretty key position. So those are things to watch tonight. If the Nuggets get another great Nikola game, if Finch doesn't make any adjustments, if MPJ hits his threes, I think the Nuggets win game 6. But either way, I like the Nuggets to win the series. All right. That's going to do it for Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate you guys being with us. Have yourselves a great Thursday. Enjoy game 6. We will be back tomorrow. Adam and I will be with you on World's Finest on Friday, recapping game 6 and looking ahead to game 7 or looking ahead to the Western Conference Finals. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you guys again next time on Locked On Nuggets.